name is Daniel, and I live in Oregon. I've always been obsessed with exploring abandoned places, especially those deep in the wilderness. So, when I heard rumors about an old, forgotten fire lookout tower hidden in the mountains, I knew I had to see it for myself. The tower wasn't marked on any official trail maps, and supposedly it hadn't been maintained for years. Some people online said it was unsafe. Others said it was long gone. But I decided to find out on my own. I parked my car off a lonely mountain road, strapped on my backpack, and started hiking. The forest grew thicker the deeper I went, branches clawing at me as I pushed through. My GPS was the only thing keeping me on track. Hours passed before I finally spotted it, the lookout tower rising above the tree line like a ghost from another era. The paint had peeled and the wood looked weathered, but it was still standing strong. I climbed the metal ladder cautiously, every creak echoing through the forest until I reached the top. The view stole my breath, miles and miles of nothing but endless forest in every direction. It felt like I was the last human left on Earth. Inside the tower was just one small room. A rotting bed frame sat in the corner, a desk covered in dust, and shattered glass crunched under my boots. Despite its decay, it felt strangely peaceful. I set up my sleeping bag, cooked some food, and stepped out to watch the sunset. As night swallowed the forest, I noticed something strange below. A flickering orange light moved among the trees. It wasn't a flashlight. It looked more like a torch. I froze, staring. Who would be wandering this deep into the woods at night with fire in their hand? The light moved slowly between the trees, then vanished. I convinced myself it was just another hiker, though that was unlikely. But later, when I leaned over the edge of the tower to take one last look at the forest, I saw him. A man stood at the base of the tower, motionless. His face was lost in shadow, but I could feel his eyes locked on me. My throat tightened. "Hello?" I called down. He didn't move, didn't answer. For 10 long seconds we just stared at each other. Then, slowly, he raised one hand, like a wave, or maybe a signal. Without a word, he turned and disappeared into the darkness of the forest. That night I barely slept. Every gust of wind against the windows made me jump, but exhaustion finally won, until I woke to a sound that froze my blood. Creak, creak, creak. The ladder. Someone was climbing the tower. My heart pounded as I listened. The creaking grew louder, closer, until it suddenly stopped. I grabbed my backpack and slipped onto the walkway, scanning the darkness. The ladder was empty. No one was there. And then, footsteps. Fast, heavy footsteps rushing around the wooden walkway behind me. I caught a glimpse of a dark figure moving past the windows. I didn't think. I just climbed down the ladder as fast as I could, hands slipping on the wet metal. Halfway down, I looked up. He was leaning over the edge, staring down at me. I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I hit the ground running and didn't stop until I was back in my car, gasping for air. I never went back. And I never want to know what would have happened if I'd stayed in that tower 1 minute longer. My name is Alex. I grew up in rural Montana, where my dad used to take me fishing at a hidden lake tucked away in the forest. It wasn't on any maps, and there was no real trail, just a worn footpath only locals knew about. Years later, I went back alone for a weekend camping trip. I expected peace, solitude, maybe a little nostalgia. The first day was perfect. I pitched my tent by the water, fished, cooked, and watched the sunset paint the lake orange. But the next day, something unsettled me. On my third walk around the lake, I noticed fresh footprints in the mud. Bare footprints, not boots, not shoes, human feet. They led from the tree line toward the water, then back into the forest. My stomach twisted. I hadn't seen a single soul since I arrived. That night, as I sat by the fire, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. My eyes darted toward the sound until I saw them. Two people stepped into the glow of the firelight, a man and a woman. They stopped just at the edge of the light where I couldn't make out their faces. "Can I help you?" I called, my voice trembling. The woman turned and sprinted into the woods without a word. But the man, he stayed, his pale feet pressed into the dirt, bare, silent, watching. I asked again what he wanted. He finally turned and walked back into the trees, vanishing into the night. Panic surged through me. I didn't pack. I fled. I shoved what I could into my bag and bolted down the trail, heart racing. But they weren't done with me. As I hiked through the dark woods, I began hearing it. Bare feet running just out of sight, first on one side, then the other, sprinting, then stopping, following me. Every shadow between the trees felt alive. I never saw their faces, but I knew they were there, stalking me, playing with me. By the time I reached my truck, I was drenched in sweat and shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I still don't know who they were or what they wanted. All I know is that they weren't normal, and I was never meant to see them. My name is Jenna, and for years I lived out of a converted van, traveling the back roads of the Pacific Northwest. Most people assumed the dangerous part of van life was parking in cities, but I always felt safer in the wilderness, until one night outside a small town in Washington. I had pulled off a narrow dirt road into a secluded campsite surrounded by towering trees. It was raining hard, the forest thick with mist. I cooked dinner, cracked my window for fresh air, and settled onto my bed with my laptop. Then suddenly a bright light flashed through the window. Not lightning, not headlights. It was steady, artificial, and then it shut off instantly, like someone had flipped a switch. I froze. Behind my van there was no road, no trail, just forest. The rain hammered down, and I tried to convince myself I imagined it. Hours passed. The thunder grew louder, rattling the van, and then I heard it. Crunch, a branch snapping, heavy footsteps outside. My chest tightened. The rain masked most sounds, but this was close. Too close. Then came the whispering. A man's voice, hushed, urgent, as if he were speaking to someone else just outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, knock, 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 on the side of my van. "Sheriff's Department," the voice called. "Open up." My stomach dropped. No uniform, no badge, no sirens. Just a soaked, shadowy figure shifting outside my door. The knocking grew faster, louder. "Ma'am, open up." "Sheriff's Department." But I knew it wasn't. My only chance was to run. I jumped into the driver's seat, heart pounding, and turned the key. The van roared to life just as two figures rushed from the trees, pounding on the side. A hand slammed against my window, pale and dripping with rain. But the tires caught, and I tore down the muddy trail, fishtailing until I reached the road. I drove until sunrise, shaking the entire time. When I reported it, the sheriff's office told me no deputies had been out there that night. Whoever they were, they had no car, no campsite, no reason to be there in the middle of a storm. Except for me.